Welcome everybody. We are back with another video. Matthew Daniel here, Funder One Fundx. You guys haven't heard from us in a while, but we wanted to come back with some solid information on helping you guys understand a little bit of a further education on parts of our process. We have with us the man of the hour by the name of Rich Dotson. Rich is the co-founder of Thrive, and Thrive is a investment advisory firm that supports as a fee base for all different types of services. The key one that we're going to be talking about today is the trust service. And if you're going to become a Funder One member, you got to have a trust. So rather than myself talking about trust, we brought in an expert, and we'd love to bring Rich into the family as a partner with us, and we like to let him tell you guys a little bit more and elaborate on all the different type of trusts that are out there, some of the services that they provide, and he can elaborate past the trust on some of the other intimate programs or mechanisms that could further you along once you get into our program as well. So nice having you with us, Rich.
Oh, right on, Matt. Cool, man. So grateful, man. Honored to be here. Really happy to be, part of the family. The way we run our firm is, our culture is very family oriented, and so I got that, big time. I think just from me and your first conversation. So I feel like part of the family. I'm making myself part of the family here, the Fundx family. So appreciate meeting everyone, at least virtually, and happy to be here. So okay, so let me start here and get the legalities out of the way. I want to say officially, happy to talk about things, but to be very clear, nothing here is going to be construed as advice. I am not recommending anything. Don't worry, I'm not going to go down a long disclosure list, but I do want to put that out. We are an investment advisor firm, so I just want to make that clear. Just a little bit about us. Our firm's actually been around about 45 years. I took over the firm in 2017. I've been here about 22 years in the business with the same firm. We used to be called Cornerstone Financial Partners. If you're in the Bay Area, you may have heard of our firm. We work with everyday people on up to we have NFL coaches, players, politicians, that kind of thing. So really glad to be in the position I'm at in terms of being sort of connected with a good firm. We do everything under the financial services umbrella. We are fee-based, primarily financial firms, so we can handle your investments and your financial planning, things like that. Today, what I really like to talk about, I know Matt mentioned trust. That is, while I am not a trust attorney, we do have attorneys on team here. Tax attorneys, trust attorneys as well, and so we, as a team, are able to help you with your trust and give you some guidance there in terms of what's the best type of trust, what's the good fit, that kind of thing. So I think starting that conversation around trust, one of the things for me that, and I've studied trust for a long time, and let's say more recently, last 5 years or so, start to learn about the specific types of trust that effectively that the wealthy use, and they're actually constructed a little bit differently than your typical trust. And so I'm not going to go into much of that today, other than to say that typically there's 3 jurisdictions of trust. And I'll speak more from that side. Your average trust that you get from just Joe Blow attorney that you just go down the street and get, and it might cost you $5.99 or something like that. Most of the time they're living trust. Most of the time they're revocable trust, and people like those because they still feel like they have some measure of control. Right? People want to have control, and they feel like I worked so hard to own this home, and I worked so hard to do this. I can't see myself, let's say, losing my ownership position, right? And so they get worried about that. So living trusts usually fit better. Revocable trusts fit better because, again, you still have that control. The issue that comes up primarily, and I'm just going to speak in general terms, the way that people use trust is to hold an asset. We actually show our clients how to use a trust as more of a business structure and operate through trust versus just having the trust to hold things, right? There's benefits from multiple avenues: taxes, asset protection, litigation protection even, right? So there's so many benefits for actually operating through a trust. And that's a bigger conversation. But what I do want to say today is, you know, that Joe Blow attorney that gives you that $5.99 trust, and I'm not knocking that. Don't get me wrong. One of the issues with that is, and again, it's not an issue until it's an issue, right? So we like to prepare our clients for, you know, I tell my clients all the time, you know, your job is to think about today, right? Your job is to think about right now, putting food on the table right now, putting clothes on your kids' back right now, today. My job is to think about tomorrow. Right. My job is to think 30 years down the line for you. My job is also to think about what could hurt your ability and effectiveness to provide for your kids, put food on the table, and clothes on their back. So that's my job, is to think about all that stuff. So that's why we think about what could happen. But in context, right, it's not an issue until it's an issue. But if it's an issue, you sure want to be on the right side of that issue, right? So coming back to jurisdiction, most people get a trust that's drawn up from an attorney. The attorney, just in the fact that the attorney is drawing up your document for you, that attorney is jurisdicted by the state, right? They get their jurisdiction from the state bar to practice law in that particular territory, right, or state in this case. And so what happens is, what comes out of that are statutory trusts. Probably 95% of trust that you will run into, or that people have, and they figure, oh, I'm protected, I'm cool, are statutory trusts. So problems with statutory trusts. Again, until it's a problem, it's not a problem. So if you have one, don't feel like there's nothing wrong with that. They're perfectly fine. However, what can happen is that if there's a situation, and I happen to have this with a client, if there's a situation where, and this is, again, I'm just speaking casual, we're family here, so I'm just using analogies. Don't take any of this too seriously. Let's say, for instance, that I have an issue with Matt. I would never have an issue with Matt. I mean, who could have an issue with Matt, right?
Come on, go ahead. Let's go with it.
Let's say I have an issue with Matt, and I say, hey, Matt, you know, you owe me for this or whatever, and Matt doesn't want to do it, so I want to go after him. I want to sue him. The tree on his property fell and it hit my car, right? Whatever it is, I'm going to sue him. I'm pretty sure Matt owns this property, so that's why I'm going to sue him. I come to find out he doesn't own the property. The property's inside of a trust. Yeah. And Matt says, well, yeah, good luck, Rich, getting anything, because I'm protected, I'm solid, all my stuff is inside of a trust. Yeah. My brother happens to be a judge, and he is a state jurisdicted judge, and of course, he's not going to do this at all without sufficient evidence and right to do it. But let's just say the fact he's my brother has no relevance to the case. I'm being silly, you guys. I'm just making light of it. But my brother then says, hey, Rich, you know what we can do is, you got a good case here. I'll go ahead and, you know, order that this trust be pierced. So I'll be able to dissolve that trust. We'll be able to get in there and look at what assets in there, what else is in there that you might be able to go after. Because let's just say my son was in the car, he hurt my son, right? And now my son's like disabled or something because his tree fell from his tree. I'm just giving a scenario, guys. So my point here is
having those trusts in, right? I mean, at the end of the day, they're not doing what they're supposed to do, right? And that's what you're saying.
Right.
Right. At the end of the day, it's a way to get started, entry level, right? Maybe start bringing people in, but at the end of the day, to give you real protection. If you want to think about these situations, it's your insurance at the end of the day. Like, how much insurance do you want on this, right?
I mean, there you go, Matt. The perfect way to put it, brother. And I'm, again, just, you know, being playful here with that scenario. But you guys get the deal there. And so, again, these things don't come up until they come up. And you think, shoot, I thought I was covered. You try to write something off in your trust, and you think you're fine. Hey, no, I don't have this. My trust has it. And then IRS sends you a letter that classifies your trust as a disregarded entity. And this is how IRS looks at these trusts, right? And not specifically statutory, but if they're not structured correctly. So the true definition of a trust is that a trust has three parties to it. Typical trust will have three parties to it. Typical trust will have two. It'll have Matt as the creator and Matt as the trustee. and it'll have Matt's kids, let's say, as a beneficiary. Technically, there's only two parties here. Matt is serving in two positions, as creator and also as trustee. Disregarded entity. So if Matt tries to push the limit a little bit and pay for his mortgage with his trust money kind of thing, and you know, his college buddy who's always been jealous of him snitches to him to IRS and they investigate him, they're going to consider that a disregarded entity and an alter ego of Matt. And they will then, in fact, again, they can get into that trust, right? Crazy. Especially if it's a statutory trust, and they can go in there and say, nope, we're going to now charge you tax for all this stuff. So This is where I'm going with it, guys.
Wow.
A lot of, and again, I can, you know, I am not the expert on this. I just know about it because I deal with it a lot. I have these structures myself, so I'm only speaking from experience. The way around that, and to give yourself a little more insulation and protection, is making sure that your trusts have the proper jurisdiction and are going to do what you actually want it to do. Again, not going to go totally down that road, but there's statutory, which is that pretty much most trusts will be statutory. There's something called a militia trust, which is just the same thing, but pretty much created on a military property, military base. Those can be still pierced by a military judge, right, or someone on that jurisdictional level. And then there's trusts that would classify as what they call either common law, federal, pure. There's a few different names for them. These trusts are actually trusts that are effectively built on contract law, right? And this is Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution, right? So these are sort of, that's why they sometimes go by pure trust in name. These are different trusts. So what happens here is there are actually three parties to these contracts. These contracts, there is, let's say, me, just for instance. Actually, let me give you a better example. There is Matt's mom, who is the creator of this trust. Matt, who is the trustee of this trust, and then Matt's kid, right? Because you should try to keep all that in the family as much as possible for tighter protection.
Who's the trustor in this situation?
The trustor would be you.
Would be me.
So you would be operating. Yep, you would be operating the trust. Full discretion. You would have full discretion over this trust. Your mom, right, actually is the creator of the trust. So let me take that back, Matt. She would be the trustor. She would be the creator. I'm sorry. I was thinking you said trustee. Yeah. She would be the trustor in this case, who she's creating this entity that is only registered with the IRS. So it's registered on the federal level, not the state level.
Got it.
Right? So state is not a part of this contract. Good state of California, right? Not a party to this contract. My mom, Matt's mom, created this entity. Matt is going to be the trustee, and then Matt's kids are going to be the beneficiary. So at this point, there is true separation for Matt.
Right.
He didn't create this and operate it. He's hey, I just work here. Right? At the end of the day, hey, IRS, I just work here. Right? Yeah. I'm just a trustee. And that's a better position to be in because there's truly separation from yourself and these assets that are in the trust. Second part of that is that this is going to be an irrevocable trust. Irrevocable. That means I'm giving up something irrevocably. It's dangerous, right? Yes, it is if you're not a trustee with full discretion on what happens inside of that trust. Yeah. So now what happens is Matt just changed himself from a position of, let's say that his own property moved into this irrevocable trust. He just changed himself from an ownership position, which meant that in the same scenario that I just spoke about, I can personally sue Matt for his tree falling and hitting my kid in the car, right? Where now he is truly separated because the house is owned by a trust. I can go after his trust, but because it's not a statutory trust, I can't as easily just get in there and get that information. It is a private contract between his mother and him and the beneficiary. Much harder to get into. Right? Yeah. So you give yourself a little extra hedge there of protection on the back end. So and I'm going to circle this back here to this opportunity with Fundr One and Fundx. You know, and I'm gonna try not to get spiritual or metaphysical here, right? But I do believe that things happen for a reason, and I personally don't think that anything comes to me coincidentally, and I'm grateful for everything that comes my way, and I feel like I've been given things, right? And so knowing that this opportunity, I feel like is a gift for me, and literally just a quick little note on my own story. I met Matt. We have some similar. Some acquaintances that we both know, and I got introduced to Fundr One Opportunity, and I literally was like about to write a check for a property. My wife's we got to move. I want to get like a bigger place. I want to move to better school districts. Blah blah blah. So I said, okay, great. we're looking at putting down about 700,000 down on the property we want, and about maybe $12,000-13,000 a month payment. I hear about this Funded One thing, talk to Matt, and of course my initial, which I'm sure most of you felt the same way, that this can't be true. There's no way this is actually happening. I dug into the white paper, dug into Matt, picked his brain, just did my due diligence through this thing. Fast forward, my picture now looks like 300,000 into the platform instead of 700,000. Got a little extra cash there to keep, right? And about let's call it $10,000 payment versus a $12,000-13,000 payment for the same property, right? It's just ridiculous. So I really, again, look at this as a blessing in terms of the timing, right, that it came into my life. So with that said, we have this great opportunity to be in a position of ownership, and I'm gonna say ownership for now, ownership of a home without, let's say, after our 5-year membership period, without the strain of the debt that is typically associated to that home ownership. So 2 thoughts behind that. One thing in coming back to the trust, the theory or the concept behind proper structuring is one thing that you have to, let's say, let go of is ownership, right? Liability follows ownership, right? If you own stuff, you're liable for it. If you own stuff, you get taxed for it, right? So we can shift off that ownership and move that over to control. I always give the example of, you see Warren Buffett, you see Bezos, you see all these guys, they just give all this money away. And if you read just the headline only, it's Warren Buffett gave $3.6 million away. And you think, wow, this dude is so generous. But if you read through the article, it's going to his foundation, his wife's foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, right? So he's still controlling because he's a trustee in those organizations, right? So he gave up ownership, but he maintains control, right? Yeah. So it's just a different capacity. And so, to shore up this opportunity, the last thing we would want, and I'm just speaking, again, from a family perspective, is you got this great opportunity. You now finally can have a home debt-free. The last thing we need is the tree on that property hitting somebody's kid, and they come after you, and then you lose the house after all this, right? So, a trust there can help just protect this, even better. And that's really where I'm circling back now, Matt, to sort of why this conversation is coming up around this opportunity. And I love, my first conversation I had with said, very trust friendly. They actually even prefer that property be in a trust. And hey, sometimes we get in our own way, and respectfully, I think that will help us not screw up this opportunity, right? Like one bad night of drinking too much and crash on the road, and now that ends up into a lawsuit that could affect your house, at least in this case, won't be able to affect your house because it's inside that trust, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do, ladies and gentlemen. Yep. And Rich has put in much greater depth than I ever could, is we're educating you, and we want you to know how to protect yourself, right? So we're giving you the tools in the knowledge so you guys can protect yourself, all your work that you've done. Right? So these are the tools that you need so that you can succeed stress-free in your life, right? So, we hope you guys are taking it for stride, and we'll continue to give you pieces of information as we move forward. This is the first of many videos we'll be doing with Rich, as we love his insight and what he brings as far as energy and knowledge in layman's terms, so everybody can understand it clearly. So I'm sure everybody really appreciate that. That's a talent itself.
So,
yes, sir.
So if I may, Matt, just since I have a little time here, I want to also mention. So there's So what we strive for here is everything that we do. We're basically about maximum efficiency. We're a Silicon Valley company, so we have a lot of tech clients, like people that are from tech that come, let's say, second career work with us. So we're always looking at building efficient models for whatever it is. Yeah. And I just want to introduce Matt in terms of, I'm going to give the team here like a 2-piecer for sure. Your trust, that's infrastructure. You have to have that. Another component that I'd just like to add to that, that we can also help you with. I'm not going to break it down or anything. I'm just going to kind of give you a high level overview of that I think just fits so perfectly with this opportunity is a way that you can also earn money on your money. So just imagine, and I'm keeping this very abstract right now, but imagine that you have a credit card, and let's just say, I'm gonna say you have a credit card that gives you a 3% cashback return. Doesn't matter if it's spent at a restaurant or whatever, taking your wife out, doesn't matter. Whatever money you pay, whatever money you spend with this credit card, you're able to earn 3% cash back on. So imagine if you had that credit card. So let's take my example that I just mentioned. I have 300,000 that I put onto the platform, right, to get my project going. So if I had this card, and let's say I had the credit, that I had 300,000 that I could actually pull off that credit card, it would make a lot of sense for me to use that credit card to get the 300,000 that's going on the platform. Now, you all know what Fundx Coin is doing, and I obviously am expecting that to continue to grow. But what if at the same time I could still be earning year after year 3% on that 300,000, right? So that means that I take it off the card, I put it over here, and by doing that, I'm making money on it over here and over here. Fast forward, now I got my property, I'm in my property, I'm paying my $10,000 a month payment that's going for my membership fee. What if that is also flowing through that credit card? So that means now I'm still making money, and year after year, I make that money on that payment. So at this point, I'm totally maximizing and being efficient with every dollar that moves through my hand, because I have this sweet little credit card that's giving me some return capital, or let's say recapturing some of the lost interest that I could make on that money if I wasn't spending it, right? At 3%, right? It's actually a little bit better, but we like to be conservative. So we have another account that does that. And why I like that account on the back end of this opportunity is because that account also is tied to an insurance contract, and we do that for specific reasons. One, which is going to relate to this, I was telling Matt, I said, bro, this is just awesome. Like, I love this. I'm super excited. The only downside that I see to this is the traditional risk with any home ownership, right? The number one and the number two reasons that people lose their homes in the United States are disability first and death second, right? Unemployment, you can get another job, you can figure that out, you can refi the house, that kind of thing. The number one and number two is disability and death. And so why we couple this account with an insurance contract is, for one, we get tax-free benefits, which we like tax-free. We also can achieve that with our structuring from the trust and the foundations, private foundations we help people create. We can get that from this account as well. It has this insurance component. So now if something happens to me, something happens to my wife, yes, we're making money on all the money that we're flowing through this credit card account. Additionally, if something happens to me, there's millions of dollars that pops in. Now my wife doesn't have to lose the house. She can still pay the membership. She can maybe pay that thing up at this point, right, and be done with it, right? And on the flip side, which is probably more important, Matt, is what if I don't die, but I get disabled and I can't work, right? I'm self-employed effectively. If I can't work, if I can't get here and move my mouth, then I don't make money, right? So what's happening then, right? That same account kicks in and replaces that money. So it gives you a little extra protection for your membership fee, because guys, at the end of the day, and girls, the last thing we want is this great opportunity being squandered, right? Being squashed. We don't want to see people get this and then lose it, right? And Fundr One's not in the business of just, throwing out a carrot to you to really on the side try to keep your house. They're not in it to try to keep your house, right? And so I just want to offer that, as again, what we do is provide solutions. So we're always not looking at a one puncher. We're looking at a 1, 2, 3 punch, whatever we can add in there to make this thing sweeter. So for sure, tighten up yourself with your trust and that you're properly structured. Second thing is, make sure on the back end of that trust, you slap in an account that can allow everything that you flow through that to earn interest for you.
That's right, man.
Right?
So let your money work
Totally
for you,
winning.
right? Let your money work for you.
That's it, man.
No, I hear
Yes.
you. And that's very insightful. That's definitely something that everybody needs to explore on this channel, right? So
Right.
we'll put a link and share some information. I'll work with Rich on how he'd like to do that. And Rich, how are you on time? Have we hit our wall yet, or what?
Oh no, we're all good, man. No, we're all good. I got my 4 o'clock starting, but I see the other guys are jumping on, so we're cool, man.
Well, look, man, look, I appreciate you, Rich, as you know I do personally, and everybody else out there. We appreciate Rich being on this, giving you guys some insight. And we'll be back for another part on this later next week. And Rich, we appreciate you and everything you do. And
Of course.
everybody out there, Funder One Fundex, thank you very much.
There we go.